What's up, guys? Dkirks.
This is Doty.
And we just had a great conversation with a successful gamer turned competitive triathlete, Mike Wolber.
He talked about progress over perfection, discipline over motivation, embracing the suck, and failing forward.
And he had an incredible story that we didn't get into. Just Google Wolber wedding. So let's get to it.
Let's get into it. Let's go.
Mike, welcome to the show, man. Before we kick it off, we got an icebreaker. Doty's got an icebreaker question for you.
Okay.
Do you remember your first ever Instagram post?
I do.
You do?
Yeah.
Tell us more.
So I'm a total nerd. I'm not sure where this conversation will take us, but all things technology, I'm a total fanboy. Clubhouse, I'm like early adopting that right now and already hosting my own conversations. And so I remember joining Instagram back in 2011, pre-acquisition by Facebook. And this was before I even thought of it as a social app. I thought of it as just like a cool way to take photos and put filters on them. And this is probably TMI, but I guess I'm setting the tone for the conversation. I lost about 80 pounds back in 2008, went from semi-expert, really well-known video gamer to pretty fit athlete in a couple of years. And I took a shirtless picture on Instagram and posted it because you could see a six-pack for like one of the first times in my life. And the title was Narcissist. And I didn't even know what the app was for. And I like made it all black and white. And I'm not sure if it's still there. Like
it is.
So it is.
Oh, so.
And it was on December 9th, 2010.
Oh, 10. Okay, even earlier.
Which is great because Instagram started October 6th, 2010. So yeah, to your point, you were right. You were right on it.
And so I don't think anyone's ever liked it. Like it's like so far.
Well, you now have 2 likes.
You have 2 now, yeah.
Okay.
We just thought we'd kick that off with that, kind of set the tone.
I love how you just jumped right in there.
Can you tell that I'm blushing?
Yeah, that was awesome. I loved that. So you kind of kickstarted the conversation there. You said you lost 80 pounds, in 2008, I think you said.
When it started, yep.
Yeah, so just give us a quick little background about how that process kicked off for you.
Yeah, so like 60-second kind of how I got there. I grew up in Anchorage, Alaska, and my dad is an amazing father and really focused on the kids alongside with my mom, and set aside a lot of his like athletic pursuits. He's a brown belt in karate, really good martial artist. And when we got a little bit older, he picked up running when he had a little bit more free time. And I really grew up with just like an inspiration of my dad being an endurance athlete. And one of the culminations of that was going and watching my dad run and compete in the Boston Marathon back in 2009. And kind of the long story cut short, but kind of long story long, I guess, is that I was a junior in college and gotten really out of control with video gaming. I think what's the Little Caesars, like $5 pizzas?
Yeah. Yeah, it's exactly
whatever those are called. So, I mean, those were like 4 times.
I was a Domino's girl.
They were like 4 nights a week at the house, rock stars everywhere. It was just bad. And there was nothing that happened. There was no bad breakup. There was no thing. But I wrapped up my junior year of college. Actually, it would have been my sophomore year of college. I threw away literally like a $5,000 video game computer, bought a book called Body for Life, and made a really bullish goal that I just stated to all of my friends, my family. And I said, I'm going to lose 50 pounds this summer. And did not lose 50 pounds. I think I lost like 35 that summer, but I just like went all in. And I got an office job, and in the mall I was in, there was a gym. And rather than doing a lunch break, I went and did 60 minutes of working out every day, Monday through Friday. And I just like flipped my life upside down. Nothing happened. But ever since that decision, it was like game over, and the new me was born in a lot of ways.
Man, that's awesome.
It was because you beat all the games and as a gamer, and you're like, already done that. Next challenge.
It's funny you say that, because, and should I call you Caroline or should I call you Doty for today?
Whatever's easiast for you.
Okay. So
let's go Doty to keep.
Okay, so Doty, one of the like things I guess that did Caroline's kind of happen in like the inflection point before I made the decision is one of the games that I was like big in. I'm embarrassed even saying this out loud. It's World of Warcraft. Mm-hmm. And in the game, you could do /played, and it would tell you how much time you'd played that game.
Yikes.
And I did the math, and over a third of my life over the last 3 years had been in the game. And it was just sort of this like, I'm 19, 20 years old. 3 of the last, prime years of my life have been living online with a bunch of friends. It was great times, but it was just like 2 years out from figuring out what my like adult life was going to look like. And that probably had an impact on it. And that like seeing that and realizing that, it was like, wake up. And that was just sort of the beginning of the beginning, if I'm being honest.
Wow.
That's incredible.
That really is incredible. Mike, somewhere I saw online, maybe you tweeted it or it was in your blog or something. You talked about how somebody like it's something to do about routine, or like too many people get caught up in, what that process looks like rather than just getting started. Do you know what I'm talking about? Was that recently I saw that?
Yeah, progress, not perfection, or we waste a lot of time focusing on making things better when we could just be doing them mediocre, and we'd probably get a lot more done. Like there's definitely a lot that I think of in that regard, because we do obsess that in the business world, and I see it every day.
Yeah. So, I mean, is that basically what kickstarted the weight loss and the exercise? I mean, you said you immediately went to, 60 minutes during your lunch break, but was it just immediately just jumped in, didn't care what it was, and just kind of did it a little bit of everything?
I mean, I think in a lot of ways, it's almost that like you can probably both relate. Like think of the last time you've wanted to do something and you've overanalyzed the heck out of it, and you spent 3 months not doing the thing because you were trying to like figure out the way to get started.
This
And
podcast.
totally.
COVID. And I'm like, oh, if I would have done that when COVID started, I'd have a 6-pack and be able to do 8
Totally.
million push-ups like you in your first Instagram post.
Totally. And so I think for me, in a lot of ways, that mentality is certainly something that I think I've grown into. It wasn't necessarily the attitude I always had, but why wait? And I think in a lot of ways that's sort of been my devil's advocate approach oftentimes in business, as a manager, even as a husband, like progress, not perfection. And I think there's a lot to be said just in terms of how you can get started. And a lot of cliches that I really believe in: fail fast but fail forward. And when you think about that kind of stuff, like the way that I trained back in 2008 was very different than how I trained to qualify for Boston myself in 2019. Had to learn how to do it right, but getting started is what got me started.
You literally just did knowledge bomb after knowledge bomb after knowledge bomb.
I'm a quote guy, so.
Oh, I love it. And you're a goal setting guy.
I am.
Because there's some people out there that don't like setting goals. But it seems like that you are. And going into your routine, also day in and day out, and just doing it. What kept you motivated?
I think that like motivation has changed a lot over the last 12, 13 years.
But there's not a lot that really motivates juniors in college.
No. And, I kind of think motivation's silly. Like I think discipline has been the thing that I've really gotten obsessed with, where like motivation fades. And I think that I don't think I found discipline until 2008. And I think I was relying on motivation to ebb and flow. And when I was motivated, I was a good hooper in high school until I wasn't. And then I stopped my senior year because I wanted to be a great snowboarder. And then I got really great at snowboarding, and then that stopped. And I wanted to be a great video gamer. And that was like the ebb and flows of motivation. And I think when I like created discipline and rituals and habits of success, I think it was discipline that helped get me through a lot of ups and downs with job changes, and got married at a pretty young age, which was an amazing thing. But I think in a lot of ways that discipline is what sort of kept me even throughout all of that, where motivation wasn't always high necessarily, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that.
I know Caroline kept asking me about your wife. So you mentioned you got married at a young age. Like what age did you get married?
We got married. I was 25. I met her when I was 21.
Not overly young.
No. I mean, not crazy, and not crazy compared to like our parents. But I think, I was like day 30 working for Nike, and April's this like firecracker, beautiful, huge smile, super smart, super articulate, charismatic, same team, doing some sort of like fun presentation or something in, I forget, the Ken Griffey building across from Mia Hamm. And because you work there, right, Caroline?
Yes. Yep.
And she just caught my eye, and it was game over. Took me a long time to like actually get there, but about 4 years. But yeah, we've
What
been
year? What year was that?
2010 is when we met. I graduated college May of 2010, started 14 days after graduation. And I want to say I met her in early June of that summer.
That's amazing. Yeah, that was going to be my next question on how you guys met, but you nailed it.
Yeah. So,
So you guys had some Thursdays together?
yeah, it was fun. I wasn't a runner when I started working for Nike. The way I lost weight was lots of weightlifting. So I was a pretty strong guy. And I kind of had this like FOMO right away working at Nike where everyone was a runner and she was a runner too. And I like, so dumb, but it was like, oh, if I start jogging, April will really like me. So I started like, because girls love skinny joggers, and
Some girls do.
Hey, maybe it obviously worked, right? Something worked.
except I think she still wishes I was Mr. Hulky strong guy.
Well, I saw that you did run into Hood to Coast.
Yeah.
Were you involved with like the Bowerman running group, or talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I trained with the Bowerman Track Club on their amateur team. I got pretty fast running for a coach up there named Sean Connor. And they had like an amateur group, which did sponsor a couple of the Hood to Coast teams. And so we were on a team called the Derriers that was affiliated with Nike. Fastest we went was like 21:30. So we were like a 6:40 average for the full race. So pretty quick.
Yeah.
And I've done it on fast teams like that, but also like slow family teams. And the slow family teams are definitely more fun.
And then, so when you were doing those races, where were you along your path of becoming now this? I mean, we'll get into it a little bit more with Ironman and your triathlons. So when you were doing Hood to Coast, where were you along your journey?
Yeah, so I started running in the summer of 2010 to impress my crush. And that fall did my first 10K probably ever. I'm not sure if this is true, but if you went to like any of the like race recap websites, I think the race, it was in downtown Portland, and it's one of the like Halloween 10Ks, and it would have been in October of 2010. And I was slow, like 9 minute
time,
like 55 minutes, 56 minutes, like a 9-minute pace.
Oh, that's like my pace.
And I was like couch to 10K, jogging to impress a girl, not training as a runner. And 3 months later, I ran a half marathon at 7:10 pace in Arizona. And 3 months later, I broke 1:30, so it was sub 6:50 pace for the half marathon. And so by the time I first did Hood to Coast, it would have been the fall of 2011. I was comfortably running like 6:30 per mile pace for that race. So I got.
And you were dating April then?
She was into me by then. That was mutual.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So I was like,
yeah.
So
right there.
2011. When was your first Ironman? And how did you get into Ironman? Was it just like the natural progression from half marathon to Ironman, or?
So I'll tell you the like medium long story, but interrupt me, and I want to be interruptible because there might be things that don't necessarily like connect the dots on this. So my dad in 2013 did Ironman Coeur d'Alene, and I was not doing anything in the triathlon world in 2013. And April and I went out with my whole family. We stayed at the really nice hotel right on the lake in Coeur d'Alene, and we watched my dad do it. And it was out of control, like watching someone you love do something that insane. And the obsessive personality, the competitor, all of the things, I've got to do one too. And so I spent a couple months figuring out gear. But again, like progress, not perfection. Got an inexpensive road bike and started doing some local races up in Portland.
What one?
I like Blue Lake Triathlon,
Yeah.
Out at Blue Lake near the Portland airport. I did a couple others that were out in that same area. I did one out in Hood River. I forget the name of it, but lots of like Olympic distance triathlons.
I don't know if you know this about Daniel Mike, but he has really, really great legs. And I've recently learned is because he is a big time runner.
Well, this is kind of how Mike and I know each other. There's a backstory, but I'll let him keep going and then I'll circle back maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, and I'll connect the dots real quick. So I wanted to get a triathlon team because I wanted accountability. 10 Barrel Brewing was just getting a presence in Portland, and to do so, they stood up a cycling team, but they were willing to accept triathletes. And so that's how Daniel and I linked up, maybe like 2014,
Yeah,
2015.
probably somewhere right around there. Yeah.
And they kitted us out with like these okay kits, but they looked really cool. And we do occasional meetups and, a couple times, nothing crazy, but long story long, I spent 2014 racing a couple half Ironmans, did one in Austin, did one in Lake Stevens that's no longer a race, and a couple others that were local, and got pretty quick. I mean, I was running like a 128, 127 half marathon off the bike, like 640 pace.
Yeah, it's real good.
It's good. And then I set my sights on 2015. So I did Ironman Coeur d'Alene 2015. And that race, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, was one of the hottest Ironmans in history. It was like 118 degrees for the marathon. And it has like the second or third highest dropout rate in the sport.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Not from you doing it, but I just remember like reading race recaps and everything.
Yeah, it was brutal.
Yeah, for the record, I never got into triathlons quite like Mike, but my story is really similar. My buddy and I were just talking about how out of shape we were, and he was a football player at Oregon, and he's like, "Why don't we buy bikes? Let's do a triathlon." And like that day, we signed up for, what's the one in Sun River? Pacific
Crest, Pat Crest. Yep.
We signed up for the Pat Crest Olympic that day, bought bikes, decided we were going to start doing triathlons. So
cool.
That's how we got into it.
That's amazing. Cool, I've never done a triathlon, never did a sprint triathlon. I know a lot about it because my mom ran track in college and my dad got into it afterwards. So they would do them together. My dad was a huge cyclist. So they would do triathlons with me and then my two brothers in like the baby carriage.
Totally.
But I'm a basketball player, so I stay within like my lines.
I get it. Back this way.
But totally respect like the triathlon, Ironman. I think that's so awesome. A lot of props to you guys. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe one day, but.
So Mike, in my last triathlon I did one in Florence. I think they call it the Oregon Dunes Tri.
Yeah.
I had a great time, but I remember swimming and I hated it. And during the swim, I was talking to myself and I kept saying, why am I doing this? I don't like this. This isn't fun. And I know that you've had that and you have that self-talk in your runs and your training days. How do you talk to yourself to keep yourself going through an Ironman or even just the hard training days?
It's interesting. Like, you guys are both athletes, like race day magic, like race day magic is real. It's hard to bottle up and articulate. And I'll tell you that getting up on a Saturday morning after a long week of work where you've been on the road, I've been in sales for, 10 years, getting up like 6 a.m. to go ride 120 miles through Central Oregon, knowing it's going to be 50 degrees in the morning and 100 by the time you're heading home. Like, that doesn't always sound fun. And I will say there's a difference between training where it's just the grind and the goal is to be so fit that you can enjoy the race, right? That's like the reward when you're at that kind of echelon of sports. And I think that for me, like, I've never really been a music guy when it comes to training. Like, that's always been a distraction. And so for me, training, like, some self-talk. I've never really been a big mantra person. For me, I think if anything, ignoring that voice has been something I've gotten good at. So it's not necessarily self-talk or motivating myself, but just telling myself to like shut up and go. And I think that's probably something I got pretty good at was whether you want to like pick a Prefontaine quote or whatever else. But I think for me, like almost just embracing the suck and like really just deciding like this is going to suck. And I like to do this. And then there's like the guilty conscience inside of me that's like, my girlfriend, my fiance, my wife is watching me do this. How much time and money have I compromised to get here? I better freaking enjoy this. And so there's a lot there too.
Doty,
So,
I mean, it is.
So with that self-talk, I mean, there's quotes of like, you play like you practice. So can you tell us like an example or like a moment when you're training where you have to self-talk or embrace the suck during the training? So then when you are in the actual competition, you just kind of let the adrenaline come to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the simple things, and I coached endurance athletes for quite a while there, people that were looking to get started, wanting to lose weight or do big races like Ironmans. And one of the things that I always really try to instill in them, that it was something that I instilled in myself, was that the hardest days should be training days. Hardest days should not be on race day. And so I think just like setting your own expectations on, an easy day, like go as slow as you need to recover and enjoy it, even if you want to go fast. And then on those hard days, which in triathlon is sometimes the long days, sometimes the fast days, just setting your expectations. Today's going to suck, but guess what? It's going to suck today so that in 3 months at race day, I'm going to be 2% better than everyone around me. And all of a sudden, like there's something that you can then find some grit in or some confidence in, knowing that you're doing the hard stuff now, so that the stuff that looks hard when you're watching someone race and they look so fit, like it's because they did the hard work. And I think there's something to me pretty beautiful about that whole connection you can make once you're actually showing up for the big dance.
Yeah, but still, you're making it sound really easy right now, Mike. Like, I feel like I could go out and run, and do an Ironman. Like, it is not that easy. I mean, somewhere along the lines, like you had to have had some positive self-talk. You had to have like built in an amazing routine or something, right? I mean, like it's not as easy as just snapping your fingers and going out and do it.
No, and I mean, like if we connect the dots to like 10, 15 minutes ago, like that to me is where discipline is better than motivation. Because there are days where you don't want to wake up at 4:30 to be in the gold lane for master swim, to swim 4,000 meters before your family is awake.
Yeah.
And like,
yeah.
And like, but when you're disciplined, when you've made a commitment to the end goal and focusing on the process, not just the outcome, like there are songs that I know I'm going to be listening to. There are things that I'm going to be saying, like in my office, I have a quote on the wall that says hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Great
And like,
quote. One of my favorites.
Like that to me is if I was to say I had a quote, like that's something that I'd say a million times during, a commute to the swimming pool, or my third rep up to Mount Bachelor, because I'm doing 3 repeats from Bend to Bachelor during a 120-mile ride, because Ironman Whistler has 9,000 feet of climbing and I want to do 13,000 feet on a training day. And so like there are certainly like mantras, but I think that's to me where like with discipline can kind of overtake or win against that. Like, I don't want to do this today. Well, I'm disciplined. I'm going to get it done.
That's amazing. Well, so going into the discipline, you need fuel to make sure that you're able to stay healthy. You're not injured. You don't get hurt. You make sure that your body has the right fuel to accomplish these goals, to stay disciplined. So tell us a little bit about the fight in yourself on the fuel that gets you not only from like self-motivating or your wife being your motivation, but also like your nutrition, your diet. Like, what do you do to take care of yourself so you are able to stay disciplined?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like in the world of like endurance sports, not just triathlon, but in triathlon, there's 3 disciplines, right? You've got the swim, bike, and run, no matter what you're doing. And oftentimes you hear people say that the 4th discipline is the nutrition aspect. And that's not just race day. That's how you eat normally. That's your pre-workout, your during workout, your post-workout, all that kind of stuff. And I will say that that's like the one piece that even I never really feel like I totally nailed. Every year was trying different things. Like I was sponsored by Hammer Nutrition for almost the entirety of the time I was competitive in the sport, and had like a lot of their products I'd use for the actual training side of things. But, I mean, I think one of the realities, especially when you're in your like mid to late 20s and you're training 20 hours a week, is you can't eat enough food. So that was one of the things that my wife always like supported me on, but also sometimes pushed me on, was you get obsessed with being skinny because you know that if you're a little lighter, you're going to be a little faster. But
be better on the joints.
Yeah. But like with that, you're compromising something, whether it's quality of sleep or recovery or durability. So for me, that was always like the one like mental health or like head trash thing, was eating enough, but not eating too much. And I think there's an obsession there that endurance athletes can fall into that can become pretty unhealthy. And I mean, I went from 255 to 175, 170 in my like extremist, swing.
How long was that? What was that window?
That was a long window. That was like 4 years, 3.5 years. But I just say that in that, like, you know, the idea of staying super skinny for a long period of time, like becomes in a way like kind of unhealthy. And so that relationship with food, I think as an endurance athlete was always something that was real, because you're trying to like ride the line basically, if that makes sense.
Do you ever get that line wrong? You ever bonked in a race or even a ride?
Oh yeah. You know, I think that training for sure, like that whole concept of like fail forward, like try to do dress rehearsals. And so for me in those like long runs, those long rides, I was always never able to nail the balance. The one thing I loved about Ironman, even though they're like super expensive, is that they do take really good care of you when it comes to the food. So my trick was always practice with the food they're going to have on course, so I don't have to carry a bunch with me, and be really disciplined about, you know, I got to, sorry to speak so like explicitly, but like you want to be able to pee 4 or 5 times on a 112-mile bike. So if you're not drinking enough to do that once an hour, you're doing something wrong. And so there's some like gut checks you can kind of come up with just to have a sequence of things, you know, that have to get done. But training for sure, I definitely have had some death slogs in Central Oregon, 95 degrees, and I'm jog walking, death marching home because I didn't carry enough water or eat enough or whatever.
So I'm not a runner or a cyclist or a triathlete in any way. So I apologize for the ignorant question. But when you're riding or running, are you just peeing right then and there? It's not like you're going to go off to and find like a good tree to like get comfortable. I mean, you're the guys, you guys are lucky, but like.
I'll let Mike answer.
So training, I'd always like pull over and like find a outhouse or a tree or whatever. But on race day, like you let it fly when you're trying to
wherever.
Yeah, and there are. You feel free to edit this out or keep it in because
we're keeping it. We're authentic here.
You know,
very authentic. You're real here, and
yeah, I'm drinking High Noon. Sponsor us.
I'm actually very vulgar.
Okay, cool. I'm fine with that. I'm
cool.
So here's an example of what it looks like when you're doing a race with 2,500 people.
I want it all. Yeah.
You're riding the bike and you're in arrow position. You're on those bikes with your you're bent over and that arrow pose or whatever. And you have to keep a distance between cyclists so that you're not drafting. That's one of the rules with triathlons and legal races like that. And you know, the hygiene would typically become wait till you're like going downhill so that you can relax a little bit and coast. And then I'd have an extra bottle of water so that as I'm peeing on the bike, you're able to like kind of douse yourself a little bit. But I mean, I remember I've done 3 Ironmans, I've done 7 half Ironmans. I remember like finishing those races and just like wanting to throw away the kit because it's just like, what punishment did I do to that thing in 4.5 or 10.5 hours? But it's just part of the sport, and you kind of know it's what everyone else is doing around you.
It's amazing. I mean, I would frame those. Don't wash them, just frame them.
I still have a couple. They've been washed, but I still have a couple.
Amazing. That's awesome. That's the stuff that like you don't hear or know or even think about.
There's no playbook for that.
No,
I mean, we should probably edit this out too, but like, what if you have to take a shit?
It's real.
It's real. It's a real thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you hear about marathoners having to do it like right, you know, they end up doing themselves like right before they cross the finish line because they've exhausted everything they have. And then it's just like they give up like literally 5 feet in front of the line and just
totally. It's real. It's a real part of it, especially a real part of pushing yourself to that like 99th percent of what you've got.
Yeah, I know this podcast isn't about me, but I did a road race. It was a 49-mile road race, Barton Park.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
It was like a 7-mile loop. Have you done that?
I know the race. I just know the course, but I've never done it.
They have the Barton Wall, like literally like a half mile right before the finish. And on my last loop, I'm hanging on. I get out of the saddle, go up to start hammering to get up the climb, and I full body cramp.
Oh,
into the ditch, and I was just done. I mean, my body had just literally had enough, and all I had to do was ride probably another 4 minutes, and I ended up getting back on and finishing, but it was a lot later. So that's my bonk story.
My bonk story was I was in college and we were doing hills. It's called Cemetery Hill, and we had to do stuff with like medicine balls and like sandbags over, and it's like it was 400 meters up straight hill.
Wow.
And but we were a team, so there was like 4 of us on a team, and you had to complete a certain amount of meters. Doesn't matter who did it or what, you just had to complete it as a team. And we were like this close, and again, cramping. Everyone else is just kind of like fizzling down. So I'm like, I'll take the bag. And I remember running up and just like peeing myself going up the hill.
Totally.
Meanwhile, my teammates were in the woods over the little whatever wall, peeing in the woods. I was like, come on, guys, like we gotta win this thing. But anyway, that's the only time I peed myself.
Well, the thing with cramping that Daniel just mentioned is that's like one of the number one kind of faults that endurance athletes, end up falling into in a big train day or a race day, is that we kind of grow up thinking about water as hydrating. You both know this from being in sports, but that's where like not just Gatorade, but like that kind of conversation of electrolytes, salt, magnesium, potassium. If you're sweating, like a big guy like me or Daniel, like we might sweat, a liter an hour.
My big's a lot different than your big, Mike.
But still, like, I mean, 6'2.5", like we both, like there's a lot going through us. And there, people will drink so much water, they'll sweat so much that by hour 2 or 3, you're so depleted of the sodium and magnesium and potassium, the electrolytes that you need to function, that the cramping and all the things you see on TV at the end of these crazy races, it's because people neglected something super foundational. You can get away with far few calories, but if you miss on the electrolytes, game over.
So for those listeners who don't know about what electrolytes are or any of that stuff too, what are some of the foods or drinks that you would consume before to prepare and during races?
So like there are a lot of like really inexpensive and accessible, like Noon has tabs, right? And the tabs you can just drop in like water, Hammer, like Goo, like so many brands have these like tabs. That's one really easy, accessible way for an endurance athlete, or honestly, someone who's just like going on a 3 or 4 hour long hike. There's a heck of a lot less sugar in those, which is where some of the Gatorades and the Powerades can become kind of tougher on your system. But a true electrolyte, sodium, magnesium, potassium, tabs is one way. There are lots of natural foods. Bananas are super high in potassium, which is why you'll see a lot of cyclists with their kits with bananas hanging out the back.
That's me.
And I love that. But like, don't forget salt. So like one of the tricks that I usually do for my athletes is if you want to go natural, bring in some peanut butter, get like the extra salty peanut butter, and then throw that in like a Ziploc bag or something. And then you get tons of sodium from that. And then you can get a nice amount of potassium from bananas. But you got to make sure you're getting more than just salt. Like the runners of the 70s would do McDonald's salt packets, and they created all sorts of deficiencies because they were salt heavy, which is why you'd see white all over someone's sweat. It's because they're sodium heavy. They had too much salt. So that's where finding the right balance with the other components of an electrolyte is a super important part of the game when it comes to nutrition, which is why they call it the fourth discipline.
On the same thread,
Wait, what about pickle juice? Sorry, Daniel.
Totally. Pickle juice is honestly super popular. There's a company that's called like Pickle. There's a company that does like pickle juice type juice and like a little, like those little like 5-hour energy jars.
Yeah,
I might have to mute you right now.
I don't like pickles. So I can't do it.
I love pickles, dill pickles. Our baseball guys at UConn would always do picklebacks. So it'd be the whiskey and then the pickleback.
I know picklebacks.
That's gross. Yeah. That's gross. All right.
Love pickle juice. Anyway, Daniel, sorry, what were you saying? Dkirks.
So on that same thread, on your blog somewhere, Ironman Canada, you talked about the mix up of Gatorades, right? Like they switched it up. Go into that story real quick, because I think that's really interesting. And Doty might not get the gist of it, but I think you kind of just led us down that path right there.
Yeah. So my trick that I developed in 2015 was that my first Ironman, Coeur d'Alene, I carried all the nutrition. It was a pain in the butt. My bike was like 8 pounds heavier because I'd put like 6 bottles on it to get through the ride. And what happened is that I ended up running out of fuel a little bit early because it was so hot. And I saw everyone around me eating what was on the tables, and I'd almost been nervous about eating something I hadn't trained with. And so my coach at the time, he ended up basically saying, the best thing you can do if you want to be durable is just train with what they're going to have on course. And so Gatorade has an endurance product. It's called Gatorade Endurance, and it's less sugar and it's more electrolyte. And so I trained with that like religiously and would measure it out just like the bottles would happen. And I'd have that for my long runs, like 20, 22 milers in my long rides, like anything over like 70 or 80 miles. And
you were disciplined.
yeah. And
I know, I'm thinking that too. I'm like, man, this guy's
like really dialed in, like with, you know, for
Yeah.
me, every 20 minutes having 8 to 12 ounces, like really dialed in. And then on race day, they didn't end up having Gatorade Endurance. They had normal Gatorade. And so it was a pretty hot day in Whistler. And I ended up, you know, having one of the tougher days in sport, because for me, I'd trained with like this expectation in terms of my body at this point, and I performed down here because they weren't able to provide what I thought they were going to provide. So
was that an instant like mental block of you're like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
I thought, and you kind of get in your own head and you're like, wait, I was training it this way, now we only have that. So it's almost like defeated before.
talk about head trash. You're
Yeah.
totally right. Yeah.
Wow.
That was a demon for sure. That was a hard
That
one.
would've-
I mean, it's a 3-loop course too. It was a 3-loop course. And I remember the 3 loops for the bike, and I think 2 or maybe 3 loops for the run. And I remember, I mean, seeing my wife, my son, because at this point I have a kid, and my grandma, grandpa, my mom, like tons of family. And I remember seeing them and feeling guilty because I knew I wasn't going to have the race that I'd trained for. And that to me was like the hardest part. It wasn't the disappointment of my personal performance, but I almost felt like I was letting them down. And then you realize that like, that's your own, that's not them. They're just proud of you for being out there doing something remarkable. But that probably killed like 5 or 6 hours of the day for me. And it was a hard thing to overcome mid race.
Well, that's a perfect segue going into our next question, because you're mentioning it was hours and hours and hours of training and nutrition and focusing on what you need. So within that, I mean, you started back in 2010 when you first met April. So she kind of knew your training regimen and everything, but now you have 2 kids and you're training and you're doing all this stuff too. How does the training and the competitions and traveling, because you're not doing it in your backyard, you're traveling for these competitions. How did that affect your family life?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And in 2018, that was the last time I did an Ironman. I did Ironman Whistler, which was my second time at Whistler. It was my 3rd full distance. And I finished that race, and that was the race with the fiasco with the Gatorade as well. So it could be like worlds colliding, and that I didn't have the day I'd prepared for. But one of the things I'd always told myself, and I don't know if I'd ever talked about this with April, I'm sure I had, we're best friends, is I told myself that if I ever finished a race and wasn't happy or excited, like I'd walk away until I was excited to do it again. And I remember finishing that race, like an 11-hour Ironman, after training for 5 or 6 months. And our rule as a family was that every Saturday was a training day. So April was with Nathan, and I was missing oftentimes work days because I traveled for work, and then Saturdays because I was training. So you think about like the exchange of time there, and then to finish this race and to feel bummed, like not worth it. And my balance wheel, which I'm happy to tell you about my balance wheel, was totally broken. My identity as an athlete had overtaken this identity of a father or a leader at work. And I joke and say I retired from triathlon in 2018. I know I'll pick it back up because I still got to race Kona. I'm going to go to Kona. But
you sold your Cervelo, right?
Yeah, I sold everything. And again, like all in, right? Like when you're in, you're in. When you're out, you're out. And
I mean, just like you did with your gaming back when you were in college.
But then like a year later, I got the bug and I qualified for Boston. I ran a 2:58 marathon. So trained my butt off.
Where was that?
I did California International Marathon, CIM. It's the last Boston qualifier of the calendar year.
What year was that?
December of 2019. So a little over a year ago.
And what's the location?
It's in Sacramento, California.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty notorious race. It's about 20,000 people. It's a big one. It's not a major. There are a bunch of major marathons like Boston, London, Chicago.
Probably pretty flat and fast.
Yeah, it's actually a net downhill race. You still climb, but at point to point, it's actually a net downhill. But yeah, I ran a 2:58, almost a perfect marathon, even pace the whole way. And so like the endurance gene is still there, right? Like I ran 5 miles this morning before or during work, but like it's different. It's just different.
Same. Yeah, right, dude.
I got that.
No, out here. No, I haven't left my apartment. I got Instacart to deliver my groceries. I don't want to leave.
That. love that.
Ironman Whistler, in your blog, you talk about a speech that you had prepared for April. And I thought that was like a cool story. And I know Doty loves this type of stuff. Can you go over like how that happened? You were on your run and yeah, you know,
I don't remember that.
you meant, I think it was Ironman Canada. It was on the same thread. You wrote how like you were on a run and you were struggling on your run and you realized like midway through the run that it wasn't the race that you had planned and you were letting your wife down and you were going to see her and you had the speech prepared to tell her to thank you.
Yeah. And I think that's where I do remember that. So one of the things you realize, especially not just as I think as a husband or a partner, but as a father, or when your identity is more than just an athlete, and you realize that like your time isn't just your own. And I think one of the things that happened that race wasn't just the like guilt or that feeling of disappointing someone else, even though she was thrilled that I was out there doing something I loved and in their mind being amazing at it. I, felt this like perfect conflict of gratitude and guilt. And so I like really specifically remember wanting to apologize, but feeling like saying thank you was more important, because for me to finish that race after a selfish pursuit of something and to then apologize and then sit in that guilt, like what would that do to her after sacrificing to support her person? And so to me, I think like leading with gratitude was a super important part of that. But knowing that I wanted to say sorry and that I wanted to resign or retire or whatever, for me, it was just like a logical time to like focus on, creating baby number 2, which we did. We have 2 kids now, and, focus on my identity as a leader in business. And I mean, I went from director to vice president that fall, like no accidents, right? Like I doubled down at work. And so, and I've just been able to find joy in other aspects other than endurance, but identity of an endurance athlete's, alive and well. I'm my home office is also a gym. I'm looking at my Peloton on my treadmill, right? Like it's still a huge part of who I am.
That's amazing. So I was going to ask that as well. So you were talking about your identity and it being with the Ironman and your triathlons. So how would you identify yourself right now?
Yeah, I'd say I'm a husband first because I picked April before I picked my kids. And so I'm really, really, that's to me super important, and sometimes feels weird to say out loud, but I picked April first, like I'm a husband. And close second, I'm a father. I've got, Nathan, our little boy, just turned 4, and Quinn, our little girl, will be 2. And I always thought Quinn was a pretty feminine name, but I realized you have to say she because Quinn is now a name that kind of goes both ways.
Great name though. Yeah.
And I'd say third, I've doubled down on work. I've reaped a lot of dividends the past couple of years on really, building a personal brand in an industry, but also, at companies I've worked for. So I'd say my third is a business leader, and a close fourth, would be the identity of the things that still make me happy, which aside from those 3 is still that pursuit of making myself better. I'm a reader clearly and love sports, love endurance. And there we go, Daniel. And so, but I just think I'm a little bit more balanced now as an individual, because if I skip the run now, I don't feel like I'm going to lose out on race day because I'm not signed up for a race. So,
yeah,
that's so awesome. I do know that you're also a speaker, so you do speaking engagements. Seen your website, it looks awesome. So, Daniel, I think you're a little more familiar on that front, but talk a little bit more now, like your speaking engagements, kind of how you've taken that on more.
So I worked for Nike for 5 years. And when I tell people about the time there, I had 5 promotions in 5 years and had a really great run.
Teach me your ways.
But in my time at Nike, I'll tell you that
start running.
The thing
apparently
the
when's the
thing
next Ironman?
Totally. The thing at Nike though for me is that I was young when I started, and I had all these ideas. I saw all these like inefficiencies or opportunities to do things different. And then I realized that a company at the time, 36,000 global employees, not including the supply chain and factories, was that the idea of making change was going to be difficult. And so my wife and I, April, we really wanted to be in Bend. That's where we wanted to start our family. And it wasn't super intentional. It was kind of like the best accident ever. But I fell into a smaller technology company that was doing technology in an industry that was pretty narrow. So real estate or multifamily. And so what I realized is working for a company of 150 people, if you've got a good idea, there's a great chance they're going to say, yeah, go try it out. And so what happened pretty quick is I feel like my time at Nike, I feel like I got my MBA in marketing or business because I learned, you know this better than I do, Caroline, you've been there longer than I was. Everyone is a world-class storyteller. In order to get your point across, you've got to be able to tell a story at Nike. Product managers, merchandising leaders, global executives, if you can't tell a story, you don't stand on the stage and you don't win a Maxim, like any of those things. And so to me, I saw that and I saw opportunities to learn how to present, to be, charismatic and compelling, which I think are both super important. You have to have something to say as well. And
people need to listen. Want to listen.
And when I came to this, company in Bend, I just saw an opportunity. And so I started working with our marketing team, doing basic, employee presentations and things like that. That turned into regional conferences. I think I've presented at about 60 national conferences, biggest audience of over 1,000 people. Keynote speaker, never been paid to speak. That's definitely a goal for me, but I'm now pretty well known in the multifamily industry where I work, and I just took a new role in the space. And I'd largely credit it to the last 6 years I spent building a personal brand in the industry, using those skills and experiences from Nike on being a storyteller.
It's amazing. Well, I was doing my research because I was very interested in your story and how Daniel kind of came with your background and bio and everything. And I did see that you took a private plane are you in Utah right now?
I'm in Bend right now. We're moving.
You're in Bend
we're moving April 16th. Yeah, to
so
Logan, Utah.
I did see something where you took a private plane to Utah, and it looked awesome.
It was cool.
So, what you're doing?
It's working.
It's working. Keep doing it. Yeah.
She also had a specific question about your wardrobe that she wanted to ask too before we start wrapping this thing up.
So when I Daniel was telling me about you and your Ironman and how you met April and your background, and so of course I Googled you and looked at your Instagram and learned when your first Instagram post was. But your glasses is what stuck out.
Yeah.
Where do you get your glasses from?
Warby Parker. I wish they would sponsor me. They're all Warby.
All Warby. Okay, so I actually recently just did. They can do like the fit test, or where you can put five in,
five home for $1. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's free. I think it's free now.
It's $1 down, but yeah, it's free.
It's free. So, because I am in front of a computer, so I work for Nike. So I'm doing a lot of spreadsheets. I'm in systems and SAP and stuff, and I can tell that my eyes are going. So I'm looking for blue light glasses. That's awesome. You said that. They should totally sponsor you because you look phenomenal in your glasses.
You liked that question, didn't you, Mike?
Okay,
it's kind of like a signature look.
It is, and I didn't get glasses until 2008, and I was always a front of the class student at George Fox, where I went to college, and I got to class one day late, and I had to sit in the back, and I was like, I can't see the board. What's wrong? And at the end of the class, I went up front, could see it no problem, went to the eye doctor, and they gave me these like really rectangular, awful glasses. But I really vividly remember driving by McDonald's and seeing those golden arches, and the color was way more like vibrant than it had ever been before. And since then, glasses have changed my life. But as I realized that I was going to wear them all the time because I love my life when they're on, and I cry when I try to get contacts in there. I've had like 12 doctors try to get contacts and no one can. I found Warby, 7-8 years ago when it was early. I'm an early adopter, and I think I've got 7 or 8 pairs now, maybe more. And it's been a great way to kind of stay fresh and use them as an accent, and also something that like it's always on me.
Yeah, she mentioned that. She's like, I love that.
Thank you. I'm glowing right now. I'm pumped.
All right, we brought you down with
Daniel keeps me around.
and yeah.
No, I'll take it.
We got to slowly wrap this up. We got a couple more questions before we get to some competitive banter. But my question I always have to ask everybody, and I don't know your background with this ever, but Mike, why is golf the greatest game on earth?
Why is golf the greatest game on earth?
Yeah.
It's probably one of the more relatable sports in the world because I think a lot of people feel like they can connect to it, regardless of body size, shape, or hoop might have to jump.
Have you ever golfed?
I've golfed.
Fun fact: I've golfed in Wolf Run in Anchorage, Alaska.
Oh, have you really?
Yeah.
Daniel golfs everywhere.
Daniel,
what did you do yesterday?
I golfed.
I'm not a big golfer, but I'm surrounded by them and I have FOMO all the time. I feel like it's like the one thing that like in this new world, I see myself as a business leader in this new company in Utah, probably picking up some clubs and figuring it out. But the athlete in me definitely has FOMO because that's a sport of discipline in a way that a lot of other sports you can kind of grit through.
Just
Can't
get
grit.
started. Just get started.
So, okay.
It's
But no,
amazing.
what
I
would
got
you say,
started.
though?
I got started just through this whole pandemic, and
Yeah.
that's how Daniel and I got super close.
That's cool. That's really cool. I love seeing that. I think one of the cool things about outside looking in is the time out there. I'm guessing people aren't like jamming on TikTok and Instagram or out there. I'm guessing that's a couple hours of focused time with friends or by yourself. And mental health is huge these days. And I feel like that's got to be a great way to stay connected with yourself.
The best. 100%
It's
the
awesome.
best.
That's probably a better answer.
No, you
No, it's
should have
great.
said I don't like golf. That would have been better.
I love it.
Where can our listeners connect better with you online?
I'm definitely most active on LinkedIn and Twitter. Mike Wolber is my preferred name. I rebranded from Michael because Michael Wolber is a mouthful when you're in sales. And so LinkedIn or Twitter, I'm pretty active on social, but those are the best two for me.
Sweet. We'll connect.
Perfect.
Doty already followed you. We gave you 2 likes on Instagram.
Love
All right.
it.
Some
Thank you.
competitive banter. I know you probably saw our other one. Best cartoons all time. We're going to start with Doty, myself. You're going to get third, fourth, and then we're going to come back, and then you'll be the last pick. So get ready. All right. Doty, what do you
And
got?
feel free to banter about it.
I will.
Yeah, talk
F-bombs
about
are
it.
welcomed.
F-bombs are welcome. I know we're talking. My go-to right now, Rugrats.
Oh, that's your
I have a story-
first pick in the draft? That
Yes,
is
'cause
the
I have a-
number one cartoon all time is Rugrats.
Yes, and I'll tell you exactly why. So, like I said, I have a twin brother and one who's a year younger, and we grew up in this neighborhood with a lot of kids in our age group, and we would watch Rugrats, and the kids would come over to our house because we were the cool house, and Angelica would say "stupid babies," and we're like young, we're like stupid was like a bad word back then. Yeah, hang on. So there were some.
We don't have time for this, Doty.
I'll be quick. There were some neighbors' parents that were like, "My kid's coming back and saying stupid. They can't hang out with you anymore." So I lost neighborhood friends because we watched Rugrats and they said "stupid babies."
Yeah,
Anyway,
I guess
I thought it was awesome. So it's my number one.
similar lines. Simpsons for me. It's got to be the Simpsons, especially being in Portland, all the streets, Springfield, Simpsons.
Well, I thought it came from New Jersey.
It did.
I never watched The Simpsons. I feel really guilty right now. I never watched it. I couldn't even tell you like Bart Simpson. I know who that is, but I couldn't tell you like a story
all the streets
line.
in Portland have like some sort of reference in The Simpsons. So like, I just spaced on it to give you all of them, but like Lovejoy Street and all of them are in.
Well, the guy. So get this: the guy who created Simpsons went to high school with my dad in Jersey.
That's crazy.
Springfield, New Jersey. Also, I just started following the Simpsons theories because like the Simpsons like predict the future. They predicted this pandemic. They predicted Trump being president.
Yeah.
I just started following it today, actually. But anyway.
What's the name of that app where you can? Oh, Cameo. Have you guys heard of the Cameo app?
Absolutely.
So whoever the Bart Simpson voice is, I'm pretty sure you can like hire them. And
it's a lady.
Oh, so yes, I knew that. I'd read that. So I saw it.
Yeah.
So I think you can hire her for like $150 for a minute, and she'll do like a funny birthday note or sales kickoffs. That's a big thing where people hire them to do like a welcome address or something.
Cool.
But
who's the lady who the lion person, the whole documentary? What's it called? Lion King.
Oh yeah. Oh, she's
what's her
making
name?
bank on Cameo.
I'm pretty sure she's making a lot of money.
Carol Baskin.
Yeah,
Carol Baskin.
Killed her husband. They snacking.
Yeah, she's making a lot
All
of
right,
money.
we got to get through this. Mike, give us 3 and 4.
So I was gonna say Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I love Leonardo.
That's a good one.
That is on my list
That's
as well.
a good one.
And
it's a good one.
I have great memories. My younger brother's 2 years younger than me, waking up pretty early in the 90s, frozen orange juice in a coffee mug, sitting there with spoons in the morning and watching that like pretty early.
Doty, that's a first pick. Like, how do you pick Rugrats? Oh my gosh.
Because I had a great story behind it.
Okay.
But
I work at Nike, so I tell really good stories.
Yeah, you do.
But I have a story about Ninja Turtles because that's on my list as well.
Please.
Is I had a Halloween dance in high school, and it happened to be the same night I had my official visit from Gino Ariema. So he so that's what happens. The head coaches come to your hometown and they do a home visit.
Yeah.
And it was the same night I had my Halloween dance. So I had to be like all nice and proper and like professional with my soon to be future college coach.
Just a Hall of
It
Famer.
was like,
No big
it's
deal.
just Gino Ariam. Gino Ariam.
All right, Mike, 4.
Okay, so this might be controversial and not necessarily applicable for the audience, but Daniel Tiger, as a father, that show is doing remarkable things to teach kids the right thing. And that show,
what is it called?
Daniel Tiger, and it's Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, and it's an amazing show. I mean, I'm talking like teaching your kid how to flush and wash and be on your way. That is a lesson that your kids need to learn about going to the bathroom. You flush, you wash, and then you can leave. And Daniel Tiger has just been parent number 3 for us, and I think he deserves the world. And so,
how do you stream it?
they're on Amazon Prime. I think there's like 9 or 10 seasons. They've got great books. They've got some Christmas episodes.
They're popular.
Daniel Tiger, if you've got someone who's like getting ready to like have kids, or they're having a second kid, and what do we do with the first one? Like Daniel Tiger is a remarkable recommendation for them, and it deserves an honorable mention at the least.
Those are good ones. I like that.
Those are my 2.
Ninja Turtles.
Those are my 2. One was for me. One was for me.
That was good. My next one, my second pick is going to be King of the Hill, and the main reason why is we had a buddy that he talked like Boomhauer. He didn't ever lift up his lips, and so King of the Hill.
That's a good one. That's a really good one.
That's a really good one, because my next one is Family Guy.
Yeah, okay. You redeem yourself. I mean, I feel like that's self-explanatory.
Totally.
Yeah, it's just hilarious.
Let's see. I'm going to go with a classic. I'm going to have to go with Bugs Bunny. Anything with Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner, just
yeah.
I think the Looney Tunes umbrella deserves some conversation, if we're being honest. I think we can all connect. Our parents can connect to it. I Googled it. They started like the 1940s. I was getting ready for this. So
1940s?
I'm not sure. We can fact check that.
What was it? It's Looney Tunes, right?
Yeah, Looney Tunes. I think it's like the 1940s that Bugs Bunny was first introduced as a character.
Wow.
Wait, so was it Looney Tunes or was it like Disney? Who started the whole?
So I'm not sure if it was Bugs or if it was like a broader, but I know that like Bugs Bunny, I mean, I grew up watching a lot of that, but there was also like the Looney Tunes series, and I don't remember the separation there.
It was Warner Brothers, right?
That sounds right.
I think so, under Warner. Yeah. Looney Tunes is under Warner Brothers.
Yeah,
because they would pop out of the water tower.
The water tower.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
Mike, close us out, I think.
Okay. I was really nervous about today, and I was thinking through like the images that left a mark on my childhood. Kind of a far-fetched. You might not even remember this one. Tailspin.
Oh, I remember Tailspin.
The seaplane.
I do remember this. Yeah.
Okay, I Googled it. It's based on characters from The Jungle Book.
I love The Jungle Book.
So like Baloo the bear is in that.
Yeah.
They like
really?
They like reintroduced him in a different character name, but like it is based on characters from The Jungle Book. And I vividly remember, can't sing the song, I don't remember it that well, but I remember that being such an epic intro and exit for that show. It just like being so fired up as like the plane was coming down. So that's just a memory that I wanted to shout out.
You pulled out some good ones.
Yeah.
Great ones.
I tried to go deep.
Yeah.
Like all different areas. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Mike. I think our hour is pretty close to being up, man.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks so much. That was awesome.
Yeah, thank you.